Welcome and good evening to the City of Shakopee City Council Workshop for February 12th, 2019. If we could call the roll, please.
Mayor Mars,
Here.
Councilman Lehman,
Here.
Councilman Whiting,
Here.
Councilwoman Brennan,
Here.
and Councilwoman Contreras.
Here.
Thank you very much. Item 2, let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I was just turning them little speakers down a little bit because there was feedback going on. See
Yeah, we're in that hole right there, unfortunately.
if that works.
Push them back a little. All right. Item number 3, approval of the agenda. Any changes, deletions, additions, Mr. Reynolds?
Not from staff, sir.
Yeah.
Move the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion in 2 seconds. Any discussion? Discussion? Discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Now I'd like to call on any resident, any citizen that would like to come forward and make comment on an item not on our agenda. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and welcome. Seeing none, we will move ahead then to item number 5. For our workshop for our 2019 City Council Goals and Priorities. Mr. Reynolds, you want to lead us off?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and everybody. I recognize that this is a workshop. Workshops are designed to be a little more relaxed, to have a little more interaction and discussion as we move things forward tonight. This is something that we've been doing for the last, I guess this is year 4 now. And essentially, it's an opportunity for you to give staff some direction. And then it makes it really great for staff, frankly, because these are things we know that you want us to move forward and work on, and so it points that arrow in that direction. And even though we're doing a myriad of other things as daily operations, it allows us as a staff to come together and coalesce around those things that you have identified. So as in the past, what we'll do is we'll talk about the things tonight. I will put them up on the board, try to get some consensus on what we're looking at. I will then come back with a typed up document that kind of outlines what it is I believe you talked about, and then at that point you have another opportunity to take a look at it, see if we've missed something or didn't do things as you had wanted it done, and then we'll bring that in for a vote for the council as a whole, and that gives us some real direction moving into 2019. Now recognize it's not just 2019. We have some of those long-term things we're working on. Probably the most visible is 169 or another avenue across the river, which we've been working on for some time now. But it's always a good idea to post those long-term goals in there, recognizing that those aren't things that we're necessarily going to accomplish in a year, but that we're continuing to work on because it is something that you've identified as being very important and staff should be looking at. So with that being said, I'm going to play the role of Vanna White tonight. I have my Sharpie. And I'm going to turn it over to you, and I will listen and take notes and try to guide a little bit if necessary. But other than that, we're here to learn and listen and put something together.
Thank you. You know, at our last council meeting, we went through our review of our 2018 council work plan, and we made a lot of progress on some of our things in the finances. Park and Rec, actually, with our a study plan that we're doing for facilitating, actually was generated out of this exact meeting a year ago, that we were going to pause and take a deeper dive into our Park and Rec department. I actually have the 2017 here, council work plan too, and even some of the things that all the red is stuff that's been accomplished. I'm sorry I didn't make copies for all of you, but I do keep track of this stuff. What came out of this in 2017 was to try to actually develop a couple parcels of the city-owned land, and a couple years later, here we are, we've done that. So I think a lot of good progress on the work plan that has evolved, and I'll just start off that, you know, we live in a pretty cool community here in Shakopee, and, you know, maybe we're all on the internet off and on during the day, but MSN posts some stories from time to time, and one caught my eye today, and it was the most thrilling destinations, one for, in each of all the 50 states. And I was buzzing through them and trying to get to Minnesota and thinking, not sure, was it Duluth, was it Grand Marais, was it Rochester, was it somewhere in the metro area? And sure enough, the one listed today on a national publication on MSN, the most, yeah, thrilling destinations was the Extreme Swing at Valley Fair in Shakopee, Minnesota. Gets up to 60 miles an hour, it's 120 feet high, but I thought, and you know, as we talk about our future, to see that on, that's obviously a national thing that people might have a chance to see. It just caught my eye, so pretty cool stuff, so. Usually when we start this, I think Shakopee is a pretty conservative community, and our finances have been a major driver of almost our number one priority. We don't do a lot of ranking, but I believe in every one of them that I've seen over the last almost 15 or 20 years has had some finance aspects to it of being conservative, low taxation, continued financial stability, stable tax rate, which we've been able to drive down. I'm a proponent of the increased tax capacity, because one way you can help the citizens of your community is to build tax capacity, which therefore can drive down taxes and tax rates. And obviously last year we put on this bond rating. So for me, and we'll go around the table, I'd like to see those things still remain on our list.
I think, I agree with you. I think we could take all of them and
Yep,
move on.
yeah,
Always low taxes, always stable tax rate. If you can lower the tax rate, that's a good thing, which we've done. The one piece about the tax capacity is you could double your tax capacity and it doesn't do you any good unless the additional tax capacity is paying taxes. So that's an important piece of that in order for it to benefit the community at large, at least in a financial aspect.
what about values?
At least in a financial aspect. So yes, I'm all for keeping the taxation low, keeping a stable tax rate, if not a lowering tax rate, adding capacity, bond rating should be on that list also.
Yeah, Darren?
That should be
We
on
gotta
that
sell some
financial
bonds
piece.
first, so I
That should be on the financial piece also.
Yeah, that's right.
Counselor Brennan?
I agree. I think everything that's on the list for the department's mental goals for 2019 covers that, and I think we're moving in a good direction. And taxes last year was a great start, and
No, I suggested we just move all those on. One thing that we didn't have on our list that got taken care of last year was more of a public education on how the finance department works. So I want to add some kudos to staff on that, because I think that was well received. And anytime we can educate our community, I think that's good. And I'll put that on my list, continued education, pieces. I think that's always important, but that's all I have to add on the finance
Well,
part.
Darren relishes his role in educating on the finances of the city.
Does he?
Counselor Contreras?
Yes, I mean, again, just everyone said we'll just continue on, keep adding it on, and
Okay. So incorporate the same things that we have been on the finance aspect of it. Parks and Rec was here on last year, and it was developed that we were gonna take a pause. And that's in progress. I think we're gonna see some recommendations from that panel in,
I believe it's April.
May?
Yeah.
on the recommendations. We're not sure what they're gonna look like or what they're involved, but certainly if that panel has taken their time to really look long-term at our facilities, right? Even just a park is a facility. We should be taking a strong look at those recommendations and obviously trying to get them implemented if possible.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think we'll be waiting for some results from Confluence and things before we move ahead with a lot of the planning. But some of the things on our list, I think are always, some of them are important to stay on. Some I think I would like to enhance a little bit. One of them that I want to call out is the public-private partnerships. Now that we have the new Park and Rec director, that was one of his key points in some of his discussions. So I think developing those, getting more involvement from some of our civic organizations who may be adopting portions of the park or utilizing the parks in different ways. Maybe we can tap into some of those resources there. We had park building and maintenance replacement review, and I think that's going to be part of the Confluence discussion possibly, so I'll move on. But trail connections and trail signage, I think, was also something. We had trail signage in more of wayfinding, but we've been utilizing the Heritage Society and putting up some of the historic signs, talking about what was here, how we celebrate our history, and I think that historic tourism part is important. So I'd like to add a flavor to that so that maybe Park and Rec Advisory Board could get involved in finding some areas where that might be good and adding, kind of building off of that public-private partnership with some of the history societies.
Councilor Contreras, do you have any comments on this?
No.
Okay, Councilor Wyman?
I think public-private partnerships shouldn't be limited to just parks.
No, I agree. We're on the park section now.
Right. But I think when we're looking at overarching goals, first, I think it's way too early to get into the park master planning process and find out what comes out of that and where we go with it. I just think it's premature. But when we take what you're saying, Jay, is these partnerships and stuff like this, aside from looking at it from a park standpoint, that's a good goal to have in all aspects, not just parks, but in all aspects of operations. So I would go further to say that public-private partnerships in general would be a good thing to be on the list. And I've kind of got my own mental list of things that, maybe instead of going down that list, we go around and put out our list and kind of make heads or tails out of that.
Well, I think we can do that. I think one of the things that, to me, is important is, as we go through this year by year, you kind of take and look and then go, is there anything here that we need to transfer to our next list? Finances, we just discussed this.
Right. Parks is premature, so what's the next one?
Park, and the next one's land planning. I think Councilor Whiting was just kind of going from that park planning, and the next one was, public-private partnerships, trail signage and connection is right there, and it's one thing I hear about as well, too. I don't know where to go. How does this connect? We heard a couple of years ago about signage for parking, a little away from parks, but I think that signage is a very inexpensive way to at least help, or trail connections where there's a missing link, and we have worked on plenty of those, more to do, but those are important, especially the missing links. And then how do I get there? Is there a small kiosk that says this way to that way to that way? those are important, so, but
Didn't we already decide that we wanted to do that? I think we already decided we wanted to do that.
okay.
So are we just?
Keep it on the goals, since, I mean,
Reiterate that,
even
or-
without Confluence's input, I think overarching, we should put that on as a goal.
The next item here, we had land planning and life cycle housing. I think we have some 1,800 units in the pipeline in different phases. I think they're all for life cycle housing or housing for all, that we have some affordable housing with Common Bond. The development over by Target, I think, is phase 2 for low income. We have housing in the West End. We have now several apartment buildings that are in either up or coming. That's a big
I
thing.
do want to add, that I think the one by Target is workforce housing. So,
Housing for all or
right,
life
I
cycle
just
housing.
want to make sure we're keeping our titles.
Really diverse housing stock in Shakopee.
I think we do. I think it's we've done well on this. I don't want to say that we shouldn't have it as a goal, but I think it's been taking care of itself almost. I want to keep a focus on it, but I guess the question I have is, does the body think we should keep it as our goal?
I think we have to keep it as our goal. I think there's going to be more demand, and I think we have to have a direction. So
I think the markets drive it, not council. So I think if we're going to set it as a goal, the goal is to monitor what the market's doing.
I kind of agree with both of you. I'm not sure if it should be a goal.
I mean, it's not really, it's the market that's driving it, and we can't control the market. I mean, we can monitor the markets, but what good does that do us? The people that really need to monitor the market are the people that build these and manage these, and they should be capturing where the markets are to make their money. That's how the market works. And, we see proposals from people like that, whether it's Benedictine or anybody else that wants to put some proposal together to fit a market need that they've found. And that's fine. I mean, we can monitor these things. I don't know that does us any good.
I mean, I would like to keep it as a goal. I hear, people have asked me, just make sure, that there is, I'm trying to find the correct word, but,
Affordable, I think.
well, that's what I have, affordable, but, diverse.
I know
Housing.
there's been a lot of articles about affordable housing just in the last week, but the prior week before that, there was a great piece done by the Star and Tribune about an interactive thing where you could type in the name of your community and pull up, and they had 6 or 7 charts on your community, and that really grabbed my eye. The Ostega was the #1 on the list at 100 cities. I think Shakopee was 48th. We have, I think, a pretty affordable community. Our average home is $249,000. Now, that may sound like a lot to some, but even our adjacent neighbors, Prior Lake and Savage, have homes at $290,000 and over $300,000. I've always said that 50%, at least 50% of our homes here in Shakopee, because of our older district, is at $250,000 or less. Our home ownership percentage is up around 77%. And we talk about also, I missed the term here, the percentage of your income towards your home. And they talk about that being at 30%. And I think Shakopee's at 22%. But, I looked at those and go, how do we compare to other communities? I grew up in northern Minnesota. I saw a small suburb of Duluth, Hermantown, Minnesota, small community of 14,000. Their average home is $280,000. And I went, up there, nothing, up there, but it's not in the metro area. And I went, wow, here we are in Shakopee, a town of 40,000 plus, and our community has, our average home is $249,000.
if we're gonna dive into housing affordability, let's put some reality and some facts on the table. The only people that can change a 30-year fixed mortgage or a 15-year fixed mortgage and make it increase is government. It's a contract that doesn't ever change over the life of the mortgage, and the only way it's gonna go up is if your taxation goes up. Or fees, which are government fees. So,
Or insurance.
which happens because government comes through and says your house is valued at more.
It's not all just government, I mean, your
It's
your
mostly-
homeowner's insurance
It's
has
mostly,
probably tripled
it's
in the
mostly
last 20
government.
years.
Now, that being said, of them pieces, ours is one out of many, okay? So if we're gonna look at housing affordability, we need to look at it from the perspective of the city's portion. And the city's portion taxes last year were held pretty flat. So from a housing affordability standpoint, Shakopee did very well.
And I think we have our financial
Right.
part of this already on the
Oh, let me-
list.
Let me
of-
finish my
of-
thought here if I could.
Of staying where we want to be and,
Can I
and,
finish my thought?
okay.
Okay, so a lot of our housing affordability issues are caused by forces outside of our control. I mean, we know that the school district increases were pretty substantial and more than what they said they were gonna be when they passed their referendum. Almost double in some cases. And that does put a burden on people's housing affordability, but we can't control that. So that being said, how are we going to affect that? We're not. The Met Council tax increases, the other taxing district tax increases, all of these make houses less affordable. Ironically, most of them say they want affordable housing, yet they're making it less affordable. So they have to do their part if they actually truly and want to affect affordability of housing.
I think that just in the last couple of days, there's an additional article, and there was a study that Mr. Reynolds put out that, you know, it's talked about government's role and how should we do that if we're a city body, and it's like cut regulation and fees, and then I'm going, to me, some of these regulations are in there for a reason, the zoning and style and that, minimum lot sizes, and then the fees for the infrastructure that needs to be developed to actually build that house. So I really kind of struggle with that dichotomy of that. And I know material prices are up, labor prices are up, but I think that this item here, life cycle housing, is on our list and should stay on our list because we want life cycle housing all the way up from coming out of high school or college and all the way up to executive. You don't want to have just high-end homes. You want to have homes that match the diversity of your community. And I think it should stay on the list.
Have something?
Ms. Brennan?
I believe that we should stay focused on housing, and I think affordability and Matt's concerns are covered under the financial part of what we already have on our list.
You know, I think we do have some control over it with zoning and with some partnerships that we might create that we've done and development. So I agree with you. I think we should keep it on.
Yes, I agree.
All right, next up, I guess, going through the list before, and we'll get to our bigger ideas here. River cross capacity. Counselor Lehman, there was a update put out that Mr. Reynolds put out the other day, and you're the treasurer of that now. Are there dues on that we pay?
They were just cut in half for 2 years.
And you can pay over 2 years.
No, it was cut in half for 2 years.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank the body, I guess. Yeah, I think that's an immediate need and a long-term goal, because obviously you all know that when a project of any magnitude laid, it takes years to get done. So absolutely, Shakopee needs capacity, river crossing capacity, wherever that may be. You know, if it's a new river crossing somewhere or in addition to an existing one, 212 going up to 494 on the other side of the river is going to be
Better or
an improvement.
improvement?
101 up to Chanhassen, when that's complete, is going to be an improvement from the big roundabout out there by the Y. So we've got some good things in the works, but we need the capacity. And I shouldn't say we, I should say those south of the river, because this includes Jordan, Belle Plaine, and
It really does. and
Savage, Prior
I
Lake.
travel that road all the time, and I know you've represented Shakopee very, very well, and we all kind of pound the table, and we hear about from residents, but I fully agree that this is a area issue. And yes, we kind of are at the vortex of it, but in the morning, you come up 169, if you look at the line of traffic that's coming on a one lane out of Savage that's coming north, I mean, that stretches all the way down to 13. If you look down 169, kind of where I think would be past Shakopee, I mean, they're flooding in from Jordan, Belle Plaine, New Prague to get on that. And so by the time they come to the vortex over here in Shakopee,
The bottleneck.
you know, it's converging all that. And yes, Shakopee's one role of that. But I totally agree with you. And I know that there'll be a bill introduced, as there was last year, about trying to remove the gag order for the Dan Patch line and talk about a possible other opportunity. So I do think for our community to continue to pound on that table, even as not a spokesman for all the communities, but if we can have a seat at the table, which we've been fortunate to, we should continue.
Mayor, I think that everybody needs to understand, the public, that when you say the issue is broader for the area, it's even broader than just the area, because you have so much of your freight coming from way south
It's a big number.
up to the ports here in Savage, that it's just a huge number of truck trains and,
60% of the grain out of
Right.
the southwestern Minnesota comes in 169 and goes over to Savage.
and the loss of productivity and quality of life for people sitting in traffic for 4 hours a day is just, you start adding all these things up, and it's just mind-numbing that the problem has gotten to this level without.
Next up, riverfront improvements, and I know this has been talked about. Just to take you down history, you know, I was a big proponent of river front development years ago with the community playground. Obviously, that spurred Huber Park, right? Continuing to do that, and even tie that into Chief Shakopee, where I really think that's where we're from. And that's where our history lies. And people like history like that, and that's the draw. Yes, MSN said Valley Fair, but when I go into a small community, I always want to know their history. And I think the riverfront is vitally important. Our Envision Shakopee had 3,000 responses. One of the top things was our riverfront. I know we did a survey a couple years ago in 2016, huh? 17, and I know the riverfront was a big focal point, and for years we never did anything, and I came across this document from 2004, 2005, a small town field, do you remember this? And I'm not sure, maybe you can comment on it, but so how long ago was this, right? And a historic downtown, revitalization of the riverfront, from east to west, could be our sparkling centerpiece of our community, to be a beacon to newcomers and vision for the genuine river town experience. The riverfront and history to use to capture non-Shakopee residents. We always talk about 10 million visitors come to Shakopee between Mystic Lake, the Canterbury, Valley Fair, and the Renaissance. Our goal is to get them to stay overnight, right, for a night or two. I think that we've been saying, our residents have been saying this for a long time. And yet, we've taken very few steps to actually act on it. You know what the development of this was?
There was part of that in a comp plan back in about that time. Joe Hellcamp was a council member at the time. And the rub at the time was the document said they were gonna take properties by force. And that was unacceptable. And that was removed. Took a while to get it removed, but it was eventually removed. However, since that, a lot of progress has been made because Huber Park was built. $5 million worth. So there has been improvements made since that document in the downtown. My concerns with the riverfront are a couple. The first concern is there's some natural areas that we have in the riverfront that once you domesticate them, you lose the natural aspect of it, and you can never get that back. So you gotta be very careful of doing that and picking where you wanna. Good example would be right across the river in the biggest natural wildlife refuge in the state. You try to go over there and do something, they're gonna stop you, okay? We have corridors on our riverfront, the DNR trail, which is probably one of the hugest assets we have that's underutilized, okay? One, it's not ours, we don't have to maintain it, and it's already there. And it doesn't take very far to go to where you're into that natural environment. Get back into the Shakopee proper riverfront, you're in a domesticated area. So I think there's gotta be a balance between the two to where you really don't damage one by doing the other. My other concern is whenever we take tax dollars and utilize them for individual recreational opportunities, I step back and say, okay, how is it possible that government can supply recreational opportunities for everybody because everybody's recreational opportunities are different, okay? I would like a race car track. I would like a pistol range. I'd like a campgrounds. Is the government gonna supply this to me? No. Do they supply subsidized hockey with community center and exercise and stuff like this? Yes. So they're picking and choosing which people get subsidized recreational-wise and not others. Unfortunately, I get to pay for somebody else's recreation that I use different recreation. So I think that's a sketchy area for government to step into because it's just picking winners and losers again. That's my two concerned areas. I understand that, you know, building off of what you have with the DNR trail makes sense. But how do you do that without inequities, financial inequities? How do you do that without damaging other great assets?
Well, I think that, we're gonna go around the table here, but, you know, having a racetrack and a pistol ranger seem to be your own wants and needs. What I'm trying to call out is, this was in conjunction developed by the community. Our survey that we did a couple years ago went out to the residents of all which we serve. The Envision Shakopee was 3,000 people, of which I was one of them. Our residents telling us what we want. And then I think as a body, we should, if that's what the public wants, rather than what we want, we should try to find a way. I'm gonna read this summary here. And this kind of dates back to a statement that's on this, and I found this pretty enriching because it was after I was mayor before, but 20 years ago, or 20 years from now, Shakopee will be known and valued as a city where new housing developments and public spaces reflect community needs, where the city's unique historic perspective is not sacrificed for easy access to urban convenience, but where all residents feel connected and invested in the community. And I kind of look at this and go, this is what the residents said back then, and we can talk about it again in another survey, we can talk about it in Vision Shakopee, but maybe we take the next step and find a way to do that. Talking about the riverfront.
The riverfront is in part of the parks, open spaces, trails task force. And I think that it's being looked at and as not a highly developed area. I know that we're still talking about it farther from the area from Huber Park to Memorial Park, but more of an area that can be traveled through bicycles or walking. And it'll be interesting to see what the concept is that comes through. History, I think history connects people to the community. You can be from anywhere. I'm not from Shakopee. I know the stories of history. I connect to the community just by hearing the stories of history. You know, I can hear the stories of things that happened in the 1800s, and I'm part of that community. So I think history is very important to that area, and I'd like to see that continued.
Sorry.
Counselor Contreras?
I acknowledge and I respect the way you want to use your time for recreational, but I think what we're trying to do is what gives the city, you know, a more value. Where can our citizens connect, like Jody's saying? And I think Riverfront, working on it, would give us those things that the city has already said in this envision. And I think that is what they want. 3,000 people answered it, and that's something, you know, that we're asking, and it keeps us competitive, you know, I mean, way above competitive, because I don't know if any other city would have a riverfront. And I mean, just gives us what people want, you know, and there's, you know, different things, like you said, people would like to maybe spend it a different way, but I think that would just give more value to Shakopee. And I mean, I think that's what we're looking for.
Counselor Whiting?
No, I agree. This has been on goals and plans and surveys, and now it's part of or once we adopt our Envision Shakopee comp plan, it'll be part of that. One of the big ideas was part of that, and to me, that was the big one. Were you going to bring that up?
Yeah, we have the big ideas from the Envision Shakopee actually available if you want to bounce through those relatively quickly. Michael can walk us through them.
Want to do, well, I think we should do that, but maybe we can finish this up. But I know it's part of that, and we'll talk about that. But I think we take it to the next level, because we can talk about this, we can survey this, we can do this for a long time. Until we put some money in the budget to actually, it might take years to save up for that, or however we do it, and we look for those partners along the way. But I think we take it to the next level, and the riverfront is something we need to invest in. That's a time for budget talks, but I think it should be a highlight on our riverfront development.
Okay. Attract high-paying jobs. I think this has been on every one of the goals and priority goal plan for a long time. I don't personally think that's changed. I think that's, you know, collectively, I think that should be still a common goal. I know we raised our hourly wage aspect a couple years ago, which I think was good. Does that need to be revisited? You know, I do know that we have a lot of high-paying jobs in our community. Is that important to you? To me it is.
I think it's important that we re-look at the wage structure on a regular basis also.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an important piece of it. It diminishes it, as Councilor Lehman talked about it, if we have to give away the tax base for it. But it'd be nice to be able to attract it without having to TIF it. But
You're gonna give TIF away for something, that's the one that I would support.
Right.
Right,
And
well-
then the higher the better, right?
Absolutely.
that's the discussion. But of course, you need to have that project in front of you before you do that. But I think attracting them is a good part of that. And I think even attracting the small businesses and the startups that could potentially build is also part of that.
Well, that might come up on one of our lists later, or Shakopee U.
It is right under here, under the business retention part, but
Do you have a comment on high-paying jobs, Counselor? Okay. Downtown, improvement, redevelopment, we've taken some steps, big steps here, obviously with the city hall site, the infrastructure aspect. And I think that has enhanced our downtown. I think it's been good for business and good for our community. There was a phase two to that aspect. And I think that we should at least dust that off and revision it and look at that and see. I know that piece came in a little higher than we all liked. But I think we should look at that because it almost ties to the riverfront. Part of that was to try to get that west end of downtown more connected to that tunnel. And whether the tunnel is ever gonna get used or should, or how we can facilitate, because there's a parking lot over there, there's a riverfront over there, and in 19 months, we're gonna have a big apartment building a couple blocks away, and those people might wanna be walking and naturally just use that tunnel to come downtown, but, I think we had some name for that, River Rock, I think with that,
Oh, the,
whatever that second
yeah.
aspect of it, but, downtown is our historic core, and, I know we've taken some, done, I think, some great things to actually now have folks living down there. I think that is great. But be able to connect to the river, if the riverfront is gonna be, one of our higher focal points, so.
What was the second phase?
I thought we had,
Yeah, it was, the area coming out of the tunnel was part of the redevelopment discussion, I think.
And essentially that triangle right off Wampox and then down on where the rock is in the tunnel. You'll remember, I think we looked at that, it was going to be about 2 million as it was priced out, and so that was well in excess of the funds we had at the time, so we set that aside and just did what we
We should workshop that
I'd
one.
like to see that aspect again, and I know that we didn't have some incremental money, but, that's a way to the river that doesn't impede, doesn't have that impediment of 101. But you were parking, you kind of cross at the light, but another way, and it does a lot of things for us. It ease of access to the riverfront, the trail, we have an apartment coming. There's also an underutilized parking. I just drove down there 2 weeks ago and went, gosh, because that's where the old, didn't we have a park and rec building there, or Spuck had a building
There's an
down
old
there?
generator building, original generator for the power station. yeah.
Buck had a power plant or a station there, and the building was the police department and Park and Rec in one building.
Before that, it
George
was a
Munchausen
generator,
was
yeah.
there.
So, would that be just something on our list, the second phase, and dust that off and at least look at it?
Look at it.
I think we can look at it. I think we are looking at it, I think, on part of the parks and open spaces.
Is that in that, so?
Yes, we are. I'm getting the nod.
Okay, so then maybe it wouldn't be its own standalone? It's gonna come,
If it's on one of our goals, I think it enhances it.
okay.
So
City
I'm
Hall.
sorry, is that something you want on
Yes.
the list then?
Yeah,
Phase 2 downtown redevelopment, or?
City Hall parcel redevelopment, obviously, congratulations, this has been,
Check that box.
hasn't been built, but it's been, I think our part is, the most part is done. Reverend Pond statue, Counselor Brennan, an update?
Well, we collected $57,000 in donations, and we're reaching out to various businesses to get the remaining of it.
I think that's still important. It actually ties that Chief Shakopee and Pond, we've talked about it, and I think that effort. And again, we talk about the historic core, the riverfront, who was here, the history aspect of it. I'd like to see that continue always, yeah.
Before, just kind of dawned on my mind here, and so I wasn't on my mind until just talking about it, but seems if you want to use this tunnel and get folks using the tunnel and maybe regional people using this tunnel, there might be an opportunity to put inside that tunnel some things on the wall that have various history aspects to them.
Well, there is, they painted it.
And then you can take them, so let's say somebody goes through that tunnel and they read about A is
Have you been down there lately?
the,
Look at this.
what is that, the Brickyard?
The whole
Or,
tunnel's been,
Mill
there's a
pond.
mural through there now.
right, but I'm saying connect them so that somebody that's in there could take this one item and say, gee, I'm gonna go to that specific item.
And with the wave sign,
So,
signage.
so
and-
let's say you have something A, which is the Brickyard, and something B that is, some other historical.
Mill pond.
Mill Pond or whatever, and you have multiples, and somebody can now say, gee, I'm gonna go check out this one and this one, and they can get on the trail and go find the actual sites, and find the monument, look at it, see
That's
more
the
in depth.
wayfinding discussion we were
That's
talking about, yeah.
And these types of things, now, if you make that tunnel your starting point, they have to go there to get the information to go, to proceed, so you've kind of,
The draw.
you've forced the use, and you've made a place that you could actually even go to when it's raining out to gather the information because you're protected. So, I mean, it's a cheap thing that you could do,
Right.
and it serves what Counselor Brennan was talking about of having a history of the riverfront, and I know Jay is into the history, as well as I. So I think,
It goes along with our concept down in Memorial Park with the signage, the historic
Right,
signage. It kind of
right.
takes
But-
you
Right.
around eventually
Right.
to the kiosk.
But I think Matt's saying if I was downtown, I wouldn't necessarily know that where the Mill Pond thing area is. But if I went in the tunnel and then there was a sign and maybe a small map, and I could either take the trail and walk there or come out and drive. But that's a central location of where you could have all these things and
Right.
of you can go here and there, and that's a very good idea, Matt.
No, that is a good idea. The Heritage Society is talking about more historic signs down on the river and throughout downtown, but the wayfinding to, know where to go, that's not really been discussed. And I think that's maybe where the city could help out with same types of signs maybe, or they all look alike, but,
I think it doesn't cost much. I think it promotes the area, and I think it really promotes Shakopee's history and heritage.
I 100% agree with you.
Counselor Contreras, did you have any?
I just wanted to say that it makes some great Christmas and graduation pictures. I've used that tunnel a couple times just for those pictures, so go out there.
Okay. The next thing on this list was developer fee and regulation review, and actually the staff knocked all this right out of the park, implement electronic submission, new zoning code table, new sign code, PUD ordinance, landscaping, and new parking. You can cross that one off the list, and that's a,
I'm not sure we're ready to cross it off the list yet, but I think there's some developer fees that I don't know how much we can do with them, but I think we still need to stay on top of that and work to create that opportunity for developers to keep those prices down but it's really kind of out of our hands now.
I was actually looking.
Isn't our goal always been to collect fees equal to our actual cost?
Us, right?
Surely we shouldn't be subsidizing it, but you're right. I mean, if you want to keep housing
I'm
prices
talking like
down,
Met Council, SPUC, other people that are
right?
making it harder for us without us having any control over it, I don't know what we do there, but I think we need to keep pressure on it.
So if we were to continue looking at fee opportunities,
And partnerships.
yep, and just trying to figure out how did we phrase it last year, Mayor? How did we phrase it last year on the list? Don't recall.
It was developer fee and regulation review was the heading on that. Then I was trying to look at your staff priorities here, and I don't know if it's really broken out. Comp plan, but that, complete stormwater management plan, I think we did that the other day, updates tree program for trimming, inventory, complete park asset inventory in implementation management, I think we're waiting on that. And then some projects, Canterbury, West End, Memorial Bridge replacement, and then a 12th Avenue Bridge, or 12th Avenue Trail. So I didn't really have a matching thing here from staff, but
Somewhere we had a tunnel under Spencer Street at the, that tunnel that comes in the middle of the drainage way,
Upper Valley Drainage Way?
Yep.
The trail on one side?
where it comes up and over on Spencer Street. We talked about tunneling that underneath
On the-
Right.
Spencer at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been on the list for a while, you know, and I got here. And I believe, if I remember correctly, and Mr. Liliog isn't here at the present time, but I'll get a status on that. I don't believe it's on our CIP at this point at all. And I do know that when Mr. Loney was here, we had a hard look at that, and there were some overall issues, and I don't remember off the top of my head what it was, but we'll take a look at that, and if necessary, I'll give Mr. Loney a call, and we can kind of discuss that.
And
An update?
if it's not doable, because I think you might have to go down to get the clearance, and then you've got a water issue.
There was some issue, and I don't remember what it was, but we'll
But if it's
dust that
not,
off.
if
and-
it's not possible, then just take it off the list altogether and come up with an alternative, whether it's running it down to the roundabout or whatever. I kind of wanted to touch on the developer fees and regulation review. I guess I would put this towards staff and their cohorts from various other communities. Are there state building codes that make no sense that are adding additional cost to housing? And if there are, we as the elected folks need to lobby our state folks to stop it.
Well, I know I went to a scale presentation about, we were talking about housing for all or life cycle housing and smaller, you know, then you take and make smaller lots, have a smaller footprint, but then inside the building, how can you, countertops have to be a standard width, right? And bathrooms, and it got into this stuff that the state has, and it complicated about bathroom kind of has to be this size, but a developer says, you know, I could shave off 2 or 3 inches here, that would help. The countertop doesn't have to be 34 inches wide, it could be narrower. In combination, all those things save money to make a house more affordable, but yet those are standards, and I believe, matter of fact, I was talking to our old planner, Michael Leake, and he said, yeah, the state's got a whole book of stuff that, you know, I don't know if that's our issue to push, but we could talk to a legislator,
Right, well, and I'm asking because, you know, we've got people out in the field that look at these things on a daily basis through the permitting process, building process and whatnot, and they would know better than any of us what the really,
Would that be
Stupid stuff
something
is.
that we could start as like a development committee that kind of looks at some of those things so we know what to push to the state level? I mean, it has to start somewhere.
yeah, it has to start somewhere, and it goes into your regulation review.
Michael, do you have any comment on this open discussion?
So Mayor and Council, the state uses the International Building Code. That's updated every 3 or 4 years. Minnesota is behind in adoption, and it actually costs more for insurance in Shakopee and in Minnesota because they have not adopted the latest code. I think we're on the 2015 code. And hopefully this session, I think they're going to adopt the 2018 code.
Say international, does that mean it applies to all countries?
No, just the International Code Council is for North America, sets up the standards, so it's so that if you're a builder and you go to Texas or Minnesota or whatever, you're hopefully in a similar code. The state of Minnesota historically has been a little behind, and so it causes issues because most builders are building to the most current code, and the old code has some problems, and so they don't know what to do. The reason why counters are 24 inches, which is the standard, is because all the appliances fit 24 inches. So if you change that, that would require all the appliance makers to make different appliances. So dishwasher, stove, all fit a standard 24 inches. The bathrooms, it's a egress issue so that the door is not hitting you when you're on the toilet or at a sink. I mean, there's, yeah, I mean, there's some standards. I mean, I think the biggest change in the building code has been the energy code. And so that's a much, if you look at kind of a hockey stick curve, the energy code has gone up substantially. But the goal is long-term, it saves the homeowner a lot of money in energy. So the newer homes use probably half what an older home would on a monthly basis, for instance, when it's really cold.
But it's funny, the articles I've been reading in the study they put out, they're all pointing at government and regulation and fees, but then, I built a new house in 2000, 2001, and it was just to the start of that air exchanger that you had to have in there. And, older homes don't have them, but they have a moisture problem, and then they're out the window. So to help the homeowner in better windows, have this air exchanger, but, it is a $4,500, addition onto the house that I wouldn't have needed 5 years prior to that. Now, my windows rot out, and then I got a $10,000 to $15,000 problem without it, but is that a good thing that they required that, or adding excess fee that actually protects my investment long-term?
So I think of the initial, I think it's NAHAB, National Association of Home Builders Alliance or something, actually reviews codes on a regular basis, and they're the ones that try to work on establishing reasonableness in the code. So they have a national group that meets, and they have an annual conference, and they go through the entire building code and go back to the Code Council and the NFPA, which is the National Fire Protection, which is the firefighters. They have their own group. They try to work together to come up with some reasonableness in some of the codes. But probably the air exchanger came up because they were seeing, when they go out on inspections, windows were starting to rot out on houses that were not that old, and they found they were making them so tight to conserve energy, the air wasn't turning over and moisture was collecting and rotting the houses. So you'll see houses from the 1980s, the insulation that was used is rotting underneath the siding today because there was not the air vents built into that are required now, for instance, on siding. And so you're looking at a $25,000 or $30,000 repair for something that a new home probably is $600. So I think they've been making changes based on stuff that's being found in the field on a regular basis.
Well, they've wrapped them so tight, and then they found out, oops, we made them too tight. And then we came back and said, now we gotta add some air. If they wouldn't have made them so tight to begin with, it wouldn't have been a problem.
So our code people go to, like there was just a thing in Chaska for 5 days, which they all went to different parts of, but there is an ongoing review of the building code for Minnesota and out the whole country. So people were here from Colorado speaking, what other municipalities, issues are coming up or problems with the code. So it's, I think, pretty much being looked at on a regular basis on both a local level and a national level.
Ever removed a code that wasn't working?
Oh, yeah, I mean, the mayor's point is, I mean, there's lots of stuff that you would think, oh, that's a good idea, and they find out it's a really bad idea, and they find out because when the inspectors go out, they're having issues. So you'll find, for instance, on heating for fireplaces where gas comes in, you'll see now there's more regulators because they've been finding in some houses they blow up. So natural gas is very volatile, and you've seen recently in the Twin Cities some major explosions. That all has to do with a regulator, which is not very much money, but when they fail in a big way. So there's been industry standards made to make those regulators safer and better.
Our last group of items is under miscellaneous, and I think we have done some things here, and we're still doing them. New website, I think the city did that. A new city news wrap with some videos. I think we've seen more videos, great video by the Park and Rec for the aquatic. We've done some economic development with Shutterfly and Cameron Coffee. The administrator's on here. He's out with the public all the time, coffee. Apparently he has beer. He's making videos about the budget. Great work. And continue to do the outreach in our community, as we all do. But I think I put a lot of value on that, and I think you're doing a great job. And I hear that we're going to have more videos. And I think those little videos, it's, you know, the attention span of some people are not, you're not gonna watch something that's a half hour, but just a short little segment that highlights some of our stuff. Years ago, I know we talked about having one for the police, the fire. I heard maybe the next one will be Public Works, and
Snow plow and how, ice removal
I've
maybe?
offered to drive the truck and it got shot down, but, so these things on the miscellaneous, whatever pertains, should stay. I think.
I don't know, I mean, a lot of them have been done, didn't you?
No, a lot of them are done, we can cross those off,
But
but.
I would like to put, you know, maybe sum it up as continued community education and outreach, or
Yeah, there we go.
communication kind of point.
I was gonna say communication/education.
Yeah,
Those are two are
continued
hand in hand.
education, outreach,
And I think our city has
education,
gotten
communication, outreach.
tremendously better on Twitter, Facebook, trying to actually be proactive rather than reactive. And yeah, you're gonna have the little reactive things, and but I think we all have gotten, the city has gotten better at that. The squabble that's out there, and we can be in front and here's the information for our community as a whole.
Eventually, I think we get enough of them, so when something does pop up, we can put that old video back in, or whatever it is, that talks about it, you know, kind of tamps it down. It's a transparency piece in my mind, in how the city works.
Our last item on this page is the Southbridge Fire Partnership, and I know that it may come up in our roundabout list. We've tried to make some general progress over the last year on this, but I think this will be on the list, and we can, that's the only thing here on this, but just kind of review this, and I think there are some carry forward things. But from that, I think we can go around the table and list our things, and if we have 5 or 6 or 7 things, whatever those are, we can put them and try to find the common themes, and then take a look at it on the board.
Infrastructure is always on my list, whether it's sewer pipes or water runoff or roads or whatever. I mean, I think infrastructure is always ongoing. Not only is it today, but it's tomorrow and it's 20 years out. So I think infrastructure is critical. And I guess I shouldn't just say pipes, because we're looking at building spaces, build out in the future of PD and fire and public works and these types of things to supply the services that go along with a growing city. So infrastructure to me is all encompassing,
How
whether
do you want to
it's,
state that as a goal or
well,
a
just,
target?
in the past, it's always said infrastructure. I don't know if you want me to narrow it down, but all encompassing to me is, you know, and because it's always been on the list, at least as
So
long
like
as.
what you're saying, infrastructure improvement or enhancement, or?
Not so much improvement enhancement. I'm looking at it from,
Maintaining.
right now would be maintaining, 5 years out would be, you know, our CIP type issues, what we're anticipating. 20 years out would be, you know, how do we expand the police department when we have to? City Hall, obviously. Let me back up and say that this has been on these plans every year that I've been here. It's always had infrastructure on it. And because of that, we were able to plan long-term to purchase property for a future police station, which we built next door. The property we're sitting in tonight was purchased years ago. These are infrastructure issues.
Can I offer a title, maybe a continued infrastructure
Planning?
or planning and development? Yeah.
Infrastructure planning. We know this building is good for 30-plus years or whatever. And police department's got a plan when we built that building for expansion, and when it comes to that. Fire department, we're talking about the Southbridge location. Public Works building, it's got room for another cassette and a floor for another hoist. I know that's been in the plans. So we've got some capacity, but we need to at some point look at where exactly is that capacity long-term in all of this infrastructure?
Mr. Reynolds, do you want to make a comment on this about, as we're discussing it? I know it gets in our CIP. I know we, are looking at it. We saw the sewer and the I&I the other night. I think, those plans have gotten just better. I know that our ongoing maintenance for streets, fleet, are much better than they were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Everything's kind of like on a program now, and
Well, and I'll tell you, based upon my experience, this city does it probably better than anywhere I've seen. We're lining sewer for long-term. A handful of communities are doing that. I mean, in one of my old communities, we were still dealing with clay pipes that had been in the ground forever. And the idea of even ripping those out were so cost prohibitive that we could never do it. And yet we're extending the life of our pipe for decades and decades
Right.
because we're making that investment now, which is just amazing and such a great use of tax dollars because those pipes are going to be around for ever.
Well, I think that, 20 years ago, I don't know if that lining was.
Probably not even
viable
developed,
back then.
yeah.
Right.
And so you were trying to plan for this stuff, but then technology changed and actually made it more cost-effective and efficient and makes it better for the long term. And I know we did a study for our sewer fees based off of that, right? Because we don't need, all those dollars because we're becoming so efficient, but
Yep.
I think though, to continue doing that for the city municipality, obviously,
Well,
are we trying to have a different name to it, or?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about, and some of it is more of the cutting edge, development and planning. So we're looking at.
We're
at
very
new-
innovative.
New innovative. And I think that could be a part of our infrastructure, continued planning and innovative, infrastructure planning, I think is a good way to
And
put
that
it.
goes right into the roads. I mean, there was a point here where former engineer Bruce Loney sat before us and told us he might be recommending concrete for roads because at the time, concrete was cheaper than blacktop and lasts much longer. Well, the tide has changed now and blacktop's got better, but we're gonna see different things come forward for different roadways. And, it's incumbent upon our staff to have the latest and greatest information to be able to make a good recommendation on these new things. Sometimes you don't want to be the first to try this stuff out. Sometimes it's not a Minnesota climate thing. But we need to stay on top of it. And the reason it's really, really important is we can go way back to the dawn of time where we've over and over said that we create these funds to get away from these peaks and valleys in the general levy. Infrastructure, maintenance, planning, modifications to how you do things, whether it's lining pipes or buying a future site for a fire station or whatever it might be for down 20, 30 years out, you're saving a ton of money by planning ahead of time, as we saw on City Hall site in the police building. Great examples, or lining sewer pipes, that you don't find yourself in a situation to where it's like, okay, now we gotta have this, and you're paying premium, and it's not in the budget, and you've got this peak. So critical, I mean, it's probably one of the most important things we do, besides the operational services that we provide.
More items? Matt?
I'm gonna wait and just go around.
You have some things that you'd like to get on the list? or-
The watershed and the health of our river and the watershed. And I think that Matt brought up a good point last meeting where we need to get an understanding of what is Shakopee's responsibility of what's going into the river and what isn't. And so I think we need to have a monitoring of that. to get a better understanding of what's ours and what's upstream from us.
Yeah, I just spent 4 hours today in the Prior Lake, Spring Lake Watershed District interviews for a slot opening that was there. And as part of the interview process, the thing that I told them repeatedly was that the city of Shakopee wants to be a good neighbor and help move your water. But there are two things that concern us. One, it has to be moved safely. And two, someday, the state of Minnesota or the federal government is going to say, the water that's running into the Minnesota River, which is one of the most impaired rivers in the state, the water that's moving into that river is going to have to be treated. And I keep telling them, if that happens, my friends, it's our water. And so, and we talked a little bit about the water monitoring program that's doing. The Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District is doing a great job dealing with their two issues, which is water quality, including all the water that comes down that Prior Lake, Spring Lake channel and through Shakopee. And that includes not only the nitrates and other things that are in it, but the sedimentary levels that are present there. And then also the lake levels of Prior Lake and Spring Lake. So those are two of the big things on their list. And I just want, like I said today, I continually remind them that, you know, it is important because we are the place where it all runs to. And so, yeah, you're right. We need to be more cognizant, I think, of what that long-term plan is. And some of the stuff that we're actually doing with, oh gosh, Michael, the park. Ridge Creek Park is going to do a lot to help with that sedimentary issue as it flows and spreads out coming from that channel, which will ultimately help what's deposited in the Minnesota River.
Holding power than flow. But
Yep.
yes, still maintain
Correct.
flow.
It's a treating issue. that
Yep.
It's helping in a treating process. too.
Right, yep.
And it's unfortunate that we missed the watershed presentation.
They will be coming up.
And it's coming up.
Yep.
I'm completely with Counselor Brennan on this because it would be good for us or the city to be able to tell the state or the feds when that time comes that we have been monitoring, here's our data, we're collecting it here as it's entering, here's what it is over here. We may even be able to prove that we've improved their quality, therefore we've done our job already. Or if it's a little bit degraded more, we could say from here to here is really our obligation. The rest is on them.
So how we say that surface water, continued surface water enhancements and documentation of,
Well, this is specific to this issue, not our own.
Watershed, I mean, I think there's a new light on water quality and how's it go and where you can't just send it down its merry way. We have ponds all over our community now that, you know, those are all important. And yes, there's actually a maintenance aspect to that.
Two issues here. One is being responsible for your own actions, which I don't have a problem with, but I don't want to be responsible for somebody else's actions.
so that's where the monitoring comes in.
Right.
But we have to continue developing our own surface water, plans and enhancements, but we also want to monitor it. So we know what is ours,
Any-
what is theirs, and whose
Any-
is whose.
Any water that comes out of Shakopee into the river is our responsibility.
Right, but if we have some documentation that shows, you know, where we can get the help, we can get a shared partnership, I
The
think, in
water
some of
coming
that.
from outside of Shakopee, traveling through Shakopee, is not necessarily 100% our responsibility.
That's right,
But if we don't monitor it, how do we know?
right.
Right, we have to monitor what's coming in from the outside.
And I think that part of the Spring Lake Watershed District's presentation, which they're going to start doing yearly, by the way, we'll talk about that issue. And I would encourage all of you to ask questions about that.
Counselor Brennan, more?
Yep, I have one more. We talked about the training, presentations, the videos that we're doing and the communication with the public. I would like to see one on the boards and commissions. so that people understand what a board and commission is. We always find that people don't understand what the boards and commissions are, what their role is, if they were an applicant and were approved for a board and commission. And so I would like to see a video. I know that we have the little vignettes that we're doing, and just kind of, this is planning commission, and this is what your responsibility is.
Yeah, and we can certainly do that without making it a goal. That's more of a short term or a small piece, and we can certainly make that happen, yeah.
That kind of goes with our continued community education portion, but we're interviewing candidates, and I think this has come up in some of the discussions, and, what is the role of these positions?
Yep.
Do you have anything else?
Nope.
So I'm going to kind of piggyback on that and talk about boards and commissions. Many times we've talked about setting goals and kind of feeding some of the boards and commissions more things that we want to have worked on. And we've talked about it, and we've never really had a workshop on it, or we've never developed a plan to get the council goals pushed onto the boards and commissions. And I'd like to see that as one of our goals, is a process so that annually, councils in the future could use this process to, be able to communicate the goals of the council and feed them work that, I know staff has them doing what they need to have them doing, but I'd like to see it at a council level too. And I'd like to see that as one of our goals. We talked.
Can I get some
Yeah,
clarification
sure.
on that? Because so essentially, we're looking at a process to communicate goals that the council wants for each individual commission or board.
Well, I wouldn't really even use the word goals. I think it's more of a,
Give an example.
okay.
Okay, when this came up, and I totally agree with you, except the problem we have now is that we're in the middle of this master study with parks, so we really can't tell the park board what we think is important for them to be working on until that process is done. Where this started was, in the past, council has specifically told the park board through staff that one of the things that was important to the council at the time was for the park board to start working on a master park location plan. Circles, kind of like the fire department uses, and how much distance and what kind of parks are gonna go where and why and who they're gonna serve. So council tasked them to work on that. Tell them what they had to come up with. We told them, this is something we would like you to work on for us. They did it, we adopted it. Later on, it just kind of fell out the window, and nobody knows what happened to it, and we got parks where we didn't know we had parks, and we don't have them where we probably should have. So I think what Jay is saying is the same type of process, not necessarily saying we want you to do this. We're saying, if you've got a park board and we're done with the master planning thing, and council says, we'd really like the park board to take a look at the stretch of the DNR trail that's in Shakopee's jurisdiction from one end to the other, and figure out which area might be the best for a domesticated area and which would be best for a all-natural type area. We're kind of telling them what we're looking for, and they're gonna do the nitty-gritty,
Sure.
really get into it for us.
If and I'm trying to think about that process and how we make that happen. What about an annual joint meeting between the council and the particular body? I don't know, is that, or is that necessary?
That may be a good start. I know we've done that in the past.
I'm trying to think, we're in a big step here with park planning and that, and maybe one of them would be to have that joint meeting, presentation of the recommendations.
But I think it's gonna have to come after that.
After we've digested that a little bit.
After we digest it.
Once we
and then
figure out what
would we
our
have
first
things
thing
from
to
that
work
that we
on.
could give them direction on?
Correct,
Yep.
correct.
The B ordinance for like planning commission or things like that, chickens in the backyard, when that came up, have them, and they do that already, but if it's something that we have as a goal, have them do all the legwork and do some of the
Research and.
research
yeah.
and kind of, chew it up and put it out on paper. I'd like to see us be able to do that better and more. Even like the bicycle committee. Well, if we want to have a bicycle to get to the high school or, downtown to the high school or from the state trail up to the downtown, let's say, how do we give them a project to work on?
Well, a good example on the bicycle committee would be, we know that there's a couple of different facets of the bicycle community. There's the people that you see riding down the freeways for exercise and long distance type stuff, and then you've got the off-roaders with the big fat tires and stuff. They want the dirt and the hills and stuff. So you got a couple different factions. They all have wants and needs. The question I would put to the bicycle committee is, how can you raise money for your needs? Is it licensing? Is it granting? Or is it a combination of things? And if you had these funding mechanisms in place, what would you do with it and where would you do it?
Where would you allocate it?
Right? And these are things they should be thinking about, working on, and if successful, coming back and saying, you know what, we took you guys in this direction, and here's what we came up with. We got a map, we've got this laid out here, it's gonna cost this much, we got this much money.
Even your idea on the signage,
Yeah,
where would where would these signs be best placed so that people could use them? Some of these projects, I'd like to see us feeding them a little better and it puts more work on us too. I
More
think.
on your list?
So
Yes.
just, if I may, just to make sure, joint council committee meeting to provide direction and dialogue.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
And I'll talk with staff, maybe we can refine that a little bit, but I got the general picture. Thank you.
Direction to me, the key word, better direction. I know you brought it up a couple years ago. I know, Jay, you and I have talked about it, and, I think that, and I think we could be better at that, but.
It's our goal for us, I think, more than the staff.
what really doesn't serve anybody's purpose, council, the boards, staffs, nobody's, is when you have boards or commissions going one direction, and council and staff going another.
We've seen that.
Great opportunity for everybody to be clear on where everybody's going. So to me, it just takes out a lot of the wasted energy.
More?
We've hit on quite a few of the ones, we talked about the Memorial Bridge, developer fees, the riverfront, so I've got a lot of them, we've checked them all off completely. A couple that are still on my list is I think we need to begin some discussions, very preliminary, about annexation in Louisville Township. As we talked about with our sewer growth, we're not trying to take over, but here's an opportunity where city services could be easily utilized, but that's part of the annexation process. So I think conversations should be started. And maybe just as going in front of the board and showing them the sewer plans that, are way future and not set in stone, but I think that should be one of our goals, at least to start that ball rolling.
And that would essentially be the beginning discussions of an orderly annexation agreement then.
Right.
I think, it just seems, I'm pretty long-term, but it does seem like a long time, and I've thought about it, it's just too early because we're kind of, with the update of the Jackson Township agreement, just still seems too far away, but I was in two discussions in the last month that, and one of them was about sewer, that we were talking about, that maybe that's time. Maybe we get that committee back together and actually approach it with the concept of the very first agreement that we had with Jackson Township, where there wasn't a phasing plan, it was just a standalone annexation agreement about the three ways that things can happen. And as we know, that was the first phase. The first agreement was developed back in 2001, and nothing happened, right? The economy played a role and stuff like that, but at least the framework was there for the township, the city, and the landowner.
I think you've got a couple of pieces. This is gonna be just a little ways out. I don't think it's 5 years from now, I think it's longer.
Long-term.
But, it's not bad to always think about the long term like that. I think there's gonna be a couple of issues that are gonna drive it more than what we see today, from the Louisville's perspective. One is gonna be, right now, they're building these frontage roads, for the 41 interchange out in Louisville Township. As this progresses over the years, Louisville Township is gonna find themselves with unanticipated expense of maintenance and replacement on some of these infrastructure items. Not necessarily the county's or state's investment, but things that feed off of these, that serve their areas. Which is gonna make it difficult for them. So, these are natural drivers into the annexation process, and these natural drivers are going to happen regardless of what anybody does. It's just the way it works. Then you have the sewer issue. You're also gonna have water issues, water clarity issues, water runoff issues. All of these issues are gonna naturally drive it. If we're gonna have a conversation with them, I think it's a little early, but if we did, I think it would be an educational piece on how just these natural drivers will impact them. They're probably set up better than Jackson was because, what I've heard, I can't verify that, but Louisville has been holding on to their tax receipts and storing them up, so maybe they're planning long-term to stay self-sufficient, which, could be the case. But I think the natural drivers are still gonna drive it over time. So,
I think it's getting pretty ripe for development on some of those areas that you talked about, and that sewer and water piece will, be a big part of it. Other than that, I did want to, I think I mentioned it the other night, how MVTA looked at a paid parental leave for some of their employees. It was at a 60% rate, but I'd like to see city staff look at that, bring us back a proposal. If that's something that's feasible, maybe it's not, but I think paid parental leave is something that should be started at a government
Not
level.
a more of an administrative thing, or?
It would be, but I think it would obviously have to go through council, but I think, there's gonna be a lot of legwork in that, and I'd like to see it as a short-term goal, at least to have a presentation on it, so
Mr. Reynolds, any comment on this?
But it's
Paid, what?
It's a paid parental leave. It's paid at 60%. The reason why they did some of that is because of a lot of times people would, they'd hire, it was so cost prohibitive to hire the replacement, or half the time they didn't need to hire a replacement, and some issues with, maintaining staff so that they could keep that employee that they've spent a lot of money on. So I think I'd like to hear that plan and discussion and look at some of the pros and cons on that.
Any comment on it?
it's not a overarching goal of mine. I don't care if, I'll hear a presentation on anything at any time.
Right.
But it's just not one of my top goals for our staff to be working on.
It's kind of like staff development, kind of that part of it, but driven from a council level.
And I'll go ahead and kind of have that as a side as opposed to a goal,
Okay.
and we can do a presentation on that.
Sure. And that's, I do have a entertainment destination. We already are, you mentioned it. How do we enhance that? How do we plan to, accommodate that and enhance it and actually, you talked about it when we said, how do we get those people to stay overnight? I think at a city level, we could do more with that.
Right.
I don't know how I'd state it as a goal. Any thoughts?
Well, I think, entertainment draw, and they're mainly day trips. They're coming to those businesses. I think the goal of the city is to, you know, to leverage that for your community, to have them stay, shop, and play and eat, and, you know, maybe think, you know, River South was trying to do that a little bit, you know, trying to package a hotel room to come to Canterbury one day and maybe you go to Valley Fair the next, or, you know, that's the whole thing. Part of on my goal list is to take what we've been talking about for 20 years and to do something about it, so that, what do you have in your city that is the draw, right? Because I'm busy going to these events. No one thinks that much about, what does Shakopee have if I had 4 or 5 hours of free time? Does it have anything in the community? Someone might do some history, but, you know, you want to be able to have that as a part of that entertainment aspect, where you can promote it, advertise it, engage it. So it's one of those focal points. Got to get them to the bridge, right? Or got to get them to the mill pond, or get them to see these history points, or get them to the riverfront. Part of the community-built playground actually was an everyday destination. That's going to put people down there almost every day, and it's winter now, but boy, during the summer, I'd drive by there every day. There's people there, and they're there for the playground, and they're there for activities, but they're also there for nature against the river. How can we expand that? So I think that's a valid point, but I think it's what's the draw of the city? And I think we have some rich history. We should sell that more.
So historic kind of tourism, and I think we have a lot of people working on that, but how do we put that in so it's not just, you know, pigeonholed as that, and it's more overarching and broad?
Well, I think our comp plan is kind of phrased it as celebrate the land of big fun.
Okay,
You know, that's actually one of the big ideas.
I think it could be a council goal too.
Celebrate fun?
Well, maybe later, but no,
Right. I would have that as a goal.
I would agree.
Actually, I wanted to, in a way, try to connect, if it, maybe I might need your help and Jay's help. And going back to the supporting the conversations with these commissions, I, for some reason, see there's like a barrier. We're trying to attract businesses and even help our local businesses to grow, but I see that it's Buck, right, who has those high rates for, was it what?
Well, and the Met Council.
Yes, oh, okay, well, and for some reason, we can't attract them, and the ones that come, you know, then want help for us to pay for other stuff. So I don't know, and I don't know if that would be a goal or on the other list of just how do we get them, well, I guess, yeah, like you said, Met Council, I don't know how to handle them, but Spuck too, isn't there, I mean, their fees are super high. How do we,
Well, I think we've given staff direction to generate a joint meeting.
is it,
I think our administrator's working on that.
Yes, sir. I've sent some correspondence to Mr. Crooks in regards to a joint meeting. Mr. Crooks wants to come and just give a presentation to the council. And I had sent all of you the message that I had sent him. And my recommendation is that we deal with all of this at one joint meeting as opposed to having it broken apart.
I think for our body, which all of us are policy setters, we'd like to hear from their policy setters, right? Because they're the ultimate ones that set those policies. So I'm strongly in favor of a true joint meeting with their board.
Right,
Our board.
yeah, that's pretty common.
And that was the direction that you gave us to work on 3 meetings ago, I believe it was, 2 meetings ago.
Yeah, I thought we talked a little bit under the developer fees and regulation review, but I think I appreciate your point, that how do we take that to the next level when it's really not our purview to make those decisions? So I think that communication piece is perfect. Yeah.
Counselor Whiting, are you done with your list?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Angelica, you brought up this kind of dovetail into the utility, do you have more that you'd like to have
No,
considered?
it's just, supporting, we're talking about how we attract, people. Well, if we don't have, we have where to play, but we also need them to eat. And we want to attract, other businesses. So, that was just my idea, just connecting, having everything in the city. It's not just, hotels and play, but we need to go eat. That was another, and I've seen that that's like people have tried, but they won't, they can't afford it or whatever. So it's like, I know maybe that's why I was saying maybe it's out of our scope. That's what I was trying to say. Maybe we couldn't do anything, but it's just how do we attract?
We did talk about looking at some of our economic development money and putting it into a fund to look at restaurants specifically. And I think the mayor kind of turned me around on that when you talked about how often restaurants fail. And it's a gamble. It
Yeah,
really is.
I'm all for allocating money or whatever for economic development, I think that's important, but it came up as let's do something for the restaurants, and I like restaurants just as much as anybody else. Some are, have some great longevity to them. They're iconic. We have Wampaks, we have, Turtle's been around for 20 years. But typically restaurants, have about a 5-year span, and then it either, they would try to reinvent themselves, or they would have to, reflavor themselves as they do. Sure, we have some corporate Americas in here, and we have plenty of pizza and burgers, but we talk about diversification of housing, we need diversification of restaurants. But I worried that with such a, what I think, and I think the industry standard for a restaurant is 5 or 6 years, that if you spent money to attract that in some fashion, I think that would be for something that's gonna last a long time. When we try to allocate money for things, we think in terms of 20, 30, 40 years, or ever for that matter. I know we've helped RAR, how long have they been around for, right? They're not going anywhere. Their competitors are
They
getting out of
pushed
the.
Cargill out of the malt business.
Right.
Did you hear that?
I
saw
kind
that.
of want to focus on Counselor
that's fine.
Contreras' issue, topic. Why is it that you think restaurants don't settle in Shakopee?
Maybe I'm mistaken, but what I've heard, just that their fees, that they charge so much for the amount of seats they have, I guess, is that what it is?
And that's a Met Council,
Huh.
okay?
Okay.
So we've got that covered under our fees and regulations.
Yeah, and I just put a note up here, just Spuck and Met Council in
okay.
general is kind of just a placeholder, if nothing else. I think that generally we'll look at those across the board, and we obviously are going to be looking at the Spuck fees coming up.
Right.
And the one area of restaurants that I see lacking in Shakopee is the higher-end sit-down steakhouse type. Old Shakopee houses or the chart house type in Prior Lake. Why that is, I'm not really sure. I think, I don't have an answer to that. Mr. Kursky might be able to better answer that than me, but you would think that these types of restaurants, well, we've got Applebee's, but they're a national chain, they're
Right.
big. And then we've got the small startup mom and pop joints, some of them downtown. Then you've got the historic Wampaks.
Pablo's just remodeled.
Pablo's been around a long time. So you've got a lot of different types. But why we don't attract the upper end steakhouse,
I think it has
I'm not sure.
I think about that too.
But that decision ultimately is made by the people investing.
Right.
Because they say, okay, I'm gonna spend this much money, I'm gonna put this restaurant right here, my market share is this right here. The higher end person that's willing to spend $40 just for the steak or whatever, and maybe $80 for a meal. How many of them live in Shakopee?
Disposable income.
So they're looking at, there's a small market share, does that market share allow me to pay for my investment?
I think we're working on those higher end apartments and things, and I bet, mark my words, restaurants are gonna be clamoring to
I
get in
think,
around
I
here.
think the restaurant industry and many other industries are best left to the private sector and the free markets.
Oh, I agree. I think, restaurant business is has a very tight margin of making money. So they're gonna really look at the best place to be, and maybe it's Canterbury. You don't know, but I think that, and I think minimum wage, without, minimum wage without tip credit is really effective.
But I think you're spot on with the fees, not just for restaurants, because them fees impact all businesses.
All businesses, right?
So you're spot on in that respect.
You have more? Okay. I think for me, my list, finances, I think riverfront development. I've been staring and studying this stuff for over 20 years in our community. Every time it just continues. I mean, it's a huge point here for our Envision Shakopee. It was on our survey. It dates back to 2004. It actually was an idea of mine, and back, one of the attractions to come to Shakopee was a riverfront community, and I think that's important. I already brought up downtown to be able to look at Phase 2. I think the fire station is getting into we can be reactive or proactive, and I don't want to be so far ahead of the curve, but I think the time is now. Our response time is going down to Southbridge. More and more businesses and housing, kind of critical there. So I think we should make progress on our fire station. I think the West End, we talked about annexation, but we're, Jackson Township, our West End, and the old mall area. I think the old MnDOT property that we're seeing get up and running here. But the old mall eventually is going to become something that I would like to see, and I don't know how we play a role in it. It's owned privately, but the old strip malls are either getting reinvented or bulldozed down and getting some new redevelopment.
If I can jump on that one, I'd like to see what happens with our new development out there.
Well,
And if by what we've done out there, if that helps or nothing changes or
I
giving
think
it.
that the owner, and I've never talked to him, but, that puts on some pressures all on its own, because maybe the value goes up because now we have new development there, or he looks at that and goes, hey, maybe I should join and develop it, or maybe I should sell it. So, any opportunity to, when I moved to town, that was the place, right? That was the only place. And then to see that die off for economic reasons and new opportunities to the east, I really feel our West End now is truly the balance point between, Southbridge and Canterbury and Marshall, and now the West End. And we talked years ago that Marshall Avenue was the commercial zone was built out and all the traffic was there. And we all heard about that and design poor, but really it was 17th Avenue and Veerling Drive, those side collector streets that helped balance, because we got MnDOT infrastructure for our community on all those ramps. But there was nothing on the West End, and I think that helps bring balance into our community. And I think housing growth, business growth back over by the old mall, and then part of the comp plan had around the curve of 169, is that our new business park? Is that gonna, that's vitally important to make, I think, to make sure, because we've always talked about where's the next Valley Green? That's
you hit it right
an
there.
economic developer. We talked about parks because I'm anxious to see what this the planning and all that process took place. The Shakopee U, I have a strong interest in as well, to see that through. I work for Target. They're an innovator. They have every year they bring in 10, 15 startup companies that are, talking about 1 or 2 or 3 employees with a one idea, and they're trying to help them along a little bit, and then after a year, and they provide guidance. And then Target, at the end of the year, they kind of go on their way. Maybe Target likes one idea and invests in it. Not that the city would ever do that, but the U, there was just an article on a U on an incubator. Anything where we can do higher education and a possible incubator for small businesses that are the backbone of any community. And I think those are important. So, I don't know, maybe my biggest points are on there, but I think that it's not that we haven't taken any action, but I just look at all this stuff, and this one really grabbed me because I went, we've taken some steps, but the historic feel of downtown is preserved while increasing its vitality. A small town tradition is embraced and the city's heritage is preserved. And those are key, and you tied to the riverfront, and we talk about that DNR trail, and if we could get down to the ruins down on the west end, isn't there some old ruins down there?
Old brewery.
And then had a little clearing area and a plaque where you could read.
That's Louisville Township, or that's, I think maybe Jackson Township.
That would be, then you have, just like what Matt was saying, you have a kind of a central focal point with wayfinding signing, and you can go, and then you get there and you learn, whether it's a mill pond or down on the west end. We have a lot of history that we need to unlock and then bring people there, and I think that's what we should do.
I want to make a point on Jay's comment about the West End Mall, yours too. Don't forget that as 212 up to 494 gets fixed and opened, and 169 gets more congested and more congested, the natural alternative is going to become 69 from 169 to cross the river on 61.
You fought
Old
long and
101.
hard to get that access.
Okay? So what's going to happen is people coming up from the south, instead of sitting in traffic on 169 trying to get across the river,
Side the hill.
are going to take 69. And they're going to take 101 and go up to 494. It's just going to happen because
Well, there's already plenty of traffic that,
it's naturally going to happen, and that's going to drive the
opportunity.
vitality of the properties fronting 69 and 169 and the uses. They're going to make them viable for businesses to capture the market that's driving past them.
I agree, and that's maybe where those restaurants.
Well, that
come,
includes the
or-
existing mall
Yeah.
up there. So that's going to benefit that existing location, whether it's in the same building or a different building or whatever. Just the fact that that capacity is going to come online.
I'd like to give that one a little more time to percolate unless something happens with that, but,
I agree, but I think some of the ideas that we've shared here, and I'd like it to go down that, to think beyond yourself, as I mentioned in our last meeting when we were prepping for this. I'd like to be in a situation where 20 years from now, that we've done these things and they're already in place and have been in place for a long time, rather than continue to talk about it. Because I think we have enough data that our residents have been saying this.
and you bring that up of the riverfront, and I totally agree with you. The second thing they bring up is restaurants, so I just wanted to throw that out there, but 'cause you have a good point, but I'm not sure we're ready to
And we
jump
could
on
put
it.
up the,
3,000 commenting, which is less than, 1%. If you put out there, let's double your taxes, you'll see much more than 1%.
We'll get a few more comments.
So there's balance. But I have a few more that
Okay.
on my list. And they're probably already being done, so they might not necessarily have to be a goal. But succession planning is important, and I bring it up because I've been here long enough to see a pretty substantial turnover in staff. And not, it's always good to have people that can step up to them positions. So, and we've got some folks in various departments that are getting up in their years of service that are probably gonna leave at some point, and you don't wanna find yourself without that experience, I guess you wanna say.
Develop underneath.
Succession planning, cross-training.
Well, I know that some people though in our departments they might be second or third on the,
Right.
down the line.
Right.
And then the top opens up and they might be an opportunity for them and then they say, you know, I don't wanna be the top guy.
And that's fine.
Right. So we can plan, but I think staff
Well-
depth in each department.
Yep, I look at it from a standpoint of, and this is just an example, so don't take it out of context, but does Mr. Reynolds work with his assistant to where if Mr. Reynolds had a heart attack or something and dropped dead, could Mr. Nate step up?
Hit by the beer truck.
Take over, you know?
No,
You know what I'm saying?
If I can comment.
No, absolutely.
No, I think that's definitely always a good plan, but I think our city does a really good job at that.
We do, and
Staff development is one of your top priorities.
Staff development is one of my top priorities, and staff recognition and development of both. And Nate has actually been working on a lot of the HR issues that we identified when we first got here.
He's getting a beer truck license? No, I'm just kidding, just kidding.
Well, Nate would have to inherit Bill's tie collection, I think.
Oh,
that would
well, yeah,
go
at
on.
least.
No,
that,
I
yeah.
can't tie ties at the moment, so.
I think the last time that the city council in Shakopee had an emergency management tabletop workshop was at least 15 years ago,
Emergency management.
10 years ago at least.
Oh, we did some of that.
And there's a couple pieces to the emergency management piece. I just talked to the county administrator last week on the issue and would really like to have, I'm taking over the service delivery committee for scale. And I told them I would agree to do it if we actually accomplish things. And one of the things that I really want to see us work on, there's a list of things, but the emergency management piece, to actually have a county-wide exercise
Right.
where each city, each county organization plays their part, and it's really a walk through an education. So it's not just the city of Shakopee.
Right.
So, let's say we have a tornado that comes through and hits Prior Lake, Savage, and Shakopee, and at the same time, there's some flooding at Belle Plaine.
Right.
Or something that, like that, where the concept is that we're all
Effective.
maxed out and our emergency services are totally employed. I've had experience of being through a few hurricanes and actually 2 typhoons in an emergency operations center before. We really need that. And so we talked about that, about doing that on a county-wide level. The other piece for emergency management, and this is something that we've been working on now for the last 3 years, is ultimately making the transition from the police department handling emergency operations to the fire department, which traditionally would handle emergency operations. That is something both the police chief and the fire chief are both looking forward to happen. And that's actually on both of their lists for their goals and objectives for 2019. So both of those should occur in 2019. And my hope is that we could do that transition, which will then allow the chief of police and the fire chief to talk through their handing off of the roles as we're doing that big tabletop exercise throughout the whole county.
Do we have communications on this board up here?
No, we don't, not in,
Communications is always on there. It's just, whether it's email or
Yeah.
literature or whatever, communications, whether it's between council and administration, and whether it's,
We talked about the community
Administration
outreach
to-
kind of discussion
right,
part.
but I'm talking about the communications opportunities between us and administration and departments and their employees and everybody and the public and just communications.
You bring up a good point, and I thought of it when you're talking about emergency management. The chief had me go through a class on emergency management for, and I don't know if our new council members have done that yet.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point, thank you. The NIMS program training, we will have everyone go through the Phase 1 of the NIMS training, so you're NIMS certified at Phase 1, so you kind of understand the language and the roles of everybody during an emergency. And that was also something that we were looking to do in conjunction with the county, getting everyone, because frankly, you know, the polar vortex kind of was what started the conversation and thought process. And when Savage lost power, luckily it was just for a couple hours, but the question then became, what would we do? And so I contacted the county, we had some discussions, I talked to Savage, and we realized that this was an area that we really needed to concentrate on, because the event may not come, but if it comes,
We'll be ready.
Well, I know that they've been few and far between. I believe when we did one 15 years ago and did one in between, but we should have another one. and
Yeah.
Put that together.
I think it's important for the general public to know, in your example, let's say there's 50 below zero, power is out, it's gonna be out for a week. I mean, things are gonna happen.
yeah, all right.
The public needs to know where can they go and be warm.
Right.
And that was my question to the county. Where do people go?
Right, right.
Your point on communication, I think the communication with staff is pretty fluid. You know, talk to Mr. Reynolds, you know, we get emails almost daily. Talk to him on the phone every couple of days. I have a meeting with him almost every week that I hope all of you are doing. I think that's real important. And then if you want to meet with, you know, our Park and Rec director or Michael, I think those are great things, because you get that more information of what's coming up the pike that's not ready for prime time, and learning and understanding. I think those are real keys. So it's actually a two-way street. And the more you can be involved, I think the better, right?
And I encourage everyone to talk to our department heads, talk to our employees. I know that Jody is looking forward to getting in a snowplow and seeing about the operations. By the way, are doing a tremendous job.
Yep.
They really are doing really great work.
You don't see much, but wait.
Yeah, but it's amazing to see how good they are at what they do. I had the opportunity to follow, and especially when they're in tandem and working together, the opportunity to follow them for several miles a couple days ago, and it was really interesting for me to see that teamwork. But so please do that. Please, you know, if you'd like to do something like that, let me know. We'll certainly make that happen. And feel free, if you have questions, to either contact me or contact department heads directly and ask. If you're not getting the answers you need, I definitely want to know that, because we'll make that happen. So,
More?
Did you hear about that NIMS training? Did the chief?
I've been
talk-
in
oh,
NIMS
you've been
training,
part of it? Okay,
yep, a
so
few
that's
years
been
ago.
taken care of, good.
yeah, so I'll make sure that that's taken care of as well.
I guess I apologize. We had copies of this, so everybody got one.
Do you want to look at the big ideas now, or?
We can talk about the big ideas. I know we've hit on a lot of them, but,
Yeah, Michael, you want to remind us what the big ideas are and how they were generated?
They weren't all from the mayor, were they? Well, this is our community, I think, with these, right?
Yeah, and if I may, you know, we looked at this process significantly different than probably 98% of cities that are going through a planning process does. Because we did not have a bunch of pointy heads in the back room, meaning us, come up with all these ideas and then come out and say, hey, look at all the great stuff we came up with. In fact, we inverted that totally, and we came with a blank slate and started asking questions and getting input from the community. And we did that for 8 months, Michael?
Yep.
Over 3,000 people were involved in that. You're right, Matt, it's a small number, but I can guarantee it's a hell of a lot more than a lot of other communities, and I dare say probably more than what had touched the county plan as well. So I'm very proud of the way we did the process of this particular plan. So these ideas are not staff's, they're not, this came from the public, so.
So Mayor and Council, so as Mr. Reynolds said, so this is a little over 7% of the population gave input into this, and that's everything from high school students to senior citizens, so it's a pretty broad spectrum, and there was a special effort made to outreach to all of the members of the community, so it's a pretty broad brush here. As Mr. Reynolds said, we've gotten a lot of calls from other cities that had maybe 100 people participate, and they just want to know how this happened and I think it was a long outreach effort. So the first one is to create a fresh impression, so improve the gateways into the community. I think that's been done downtown with the Chief Shakopee statue and the entrance, but to look at where else you can do something of significance to greet people and welcome into the community. So this is on 101. I think the plan actually has a concept for doing a sign here. Eden Prairie, this same issue came out of Eden Prairie. They've spent a lot of money over the past 2 years putting all new gateway signs. Right. They got the first permission from MnDOT to do a sign on the highway. So in Eden Prairie, there's a new lit sign right at the Eden Prairie border.
Well, we've talked about that in the past, and it's hard to, we never really got any traction. I mean, you got 101 to the east, you got 69. I know we talked about putting a sign over there by the MnDOT property, and we have more entryways than some other communities, but even I think Marshall Avenue or Marshall Road down by Wood Duck, because you're coming into the community, another big thing. And if we could get a good design for a sign, and then, it always gets down to cost, and then, but I drive around a lot of small communities, and they all have a pretty nice, appealing, welcome to our community, stop, here's what we have to offer. I mean, they're simple signs, and I just saw Eden Prairie's too the other day. Goes a long way, and it certainly is even our new downtown one, really does it, but something that says, hi, you're here, and it makes a warm welcoming.
So I've been in communities that have done this, and basically over 4 or 5 years, they budget every year to do one until they get them all done, and they have a standard, and people begin to recognize them as an entrance to the city. So that was the first one. The second one you've talked a lot about tonight, but was rediscovering the river, that the river has been one of the top things that have come out. I think Confluence is looking at that pretty carefully, and also in cooperation with the SMSC, because they're a major property owner along the river. But some issues that come up, I think we've heard at the technical advisory committee there that some people don't like going on the trail. It's not well maintained, and I think you'll see some recommendations that you'll have once that report comes out. Enhancing our economic clusters, we've talked a little bit about this. We have a lot of technology companies here. Those are the companies today in high technology, enhanced manufacturing, or development that are paying those high wages. So we've been actively pursuing a number of those companies. We'll see, over the long run what the results are, but I think that, we've been out marketing that we have some leading edge companies here. You have Emerson's world headquarters here on the Rosemont division. You have Entrust Data Card, which is the world headquarters here. We have a lot of really good technology companies. We also have a really good cluster here of German companies. KEB, this is their North American headquarters. They're a company out of Germany. I think there's an opportunity that as we move forward to continue to market that. Diversify housing options. You've talked about that a lot tonight. I think we have a lot in the work to do that. Revitalizing First Avenue. I think that will happen over time as traffic increases. Knitting the community together. This has been one of the interesting things. Councilmember Lehman talked about the whole parks discussion and how they get cited. They did a heat map, which was we saw on Friday, kind of hard to follow, but it showed how really disconnected the community is. There are parks you just can't get to if you live in a certain part of town, just because of the way the community's been built out. And things like the highway and other things block access. So I think this is going to become a more critical piece. And I think we heard through the Envision Shakopee process, there's a lot of neighborhoods in this community that I think over time we should probably be working with them so that they identify as a neighborhood. You know, we talk about Southbridge. There are some pretty large people that consider themselves living in Southbridge. We probably should acknowledge that and work with that as kind of a group. They have a lot of.
That's the name of the city, Southbridge.
Yep. They think they're part of Savage, but we'll overcome that. Connecting people to nature. This goes back to the riverfront. This goes back to how we're looking at future parks. I think you'll see the concept designs that Confluence is going to be doing for Windermere and the Bluffs area there. It's already in the comprehensive plan that, you know, long term we really need to preserve some of those areas and get people access to them. I think Ridge Creek will be our first kind of true nature park that also will have trails.
That boardwalk where you can walk out right into
Yep.
raw nature and an overlook and that. You know, I've seen them in other communities and it's just spectacular. It's peaceful.
In the
It's,
corn crib. Huh? In the corn crib.
Fostering civic life in civic spaces. I think one of the hugely successful things that's been talked about has been Rhythm on the Rails. I think the other thing, you talk about a small town feel, the Christmas parade that we have really has that, and it's in the historic downtown. I mean, thousands and thousands of people showed up this year. Every year it's been getting bigger and bigger. Same is true for Rhythm on the Rails. When that first started, I kind of was like, we'll be lucky to get 500 or 1,000 people. I think last year they averaged almost 5,000 per concert. I mean, that's unheard of in the Twin Cities. So I think that's been pretty successful at doing that. And I think
combination of our infrastructure improvement that helped that obviously too, but I know Councilor Lehman has brought up our historic bridge that doesn't get used enough, and it's lit up, but it should be color-coded LEDs, but if we can get that tunnel, that parking lot, the riverfront, and then use that, and we were talking about graduation pictures. I had a friend of mine, 30-plus year friend of mine, that brought his daughter down here from Edina that graduated because she wanted her graduation pictures next to the underneath ornamental structure down there because there's some really cool metal braces along with the railing, but you live in Edina, can't you find, that.
Why don't we sell that $8 million bridge and use the money to fix up the riverfront?
Yeah, there you go. I think this is something that is taking care of itself. You know, Main Street has been a big part of it in the chamber and things, and they'll be meeting tomorrow and talking about this summer's concert series, and I'll joining in tomorrow.
Yep, and I think one of the things that Confluence mentioned, looking at Cuber Park and the connectivity and the bridge, I mean, they're going to be doing a pretty in-depth study of, you know, how do you budget long-term to make that a major point of civic engagement, so when people come across that bridge, they know they've arrived and they want to go there. I mean, right now it's kind of a hidden jewel, and they're looking pretty in-depth about how you make that a real destination.
Looking forward to see that.
The mayor touched on this a little bit, positioning for the new economy. I think that we have Valley Green's kind of going through a redevelopment. We're seeing building permits. A lot of those buildings are getting upgraded. I think that the county's done a really good job providing fiber optic throughout the community. It's really helped us. I think long-term, that's going to be really critical for us to remain viable. I think one of the issues that we're going to be faced with from a job standpoint is that more and more of the businesses that we have here today are going to become highly automated. So if you look at all the distribution we have, there are hundreds of companies worldwide looking at how you automate that distribution. So I think that's going to be an issue because we're going to lose a lot of those jobs over the next 5 to 10 years.
But I was talking to someone and we were talking about, I don't know if it was really basically about Amazon and they're using robots and stuff, but instead of the typical factory worker that's moving products, in the future, it's going to be the technicians that are there working on fixing and programming the robots, right? So it's a
It's a
different type of
dynamic
job.
shift in your, so having come from a state that had the newest automotive factories, I mean, you go in, it's pretty interesting because there's hardly any people there anymore. It's all done by robots, but the people they do have are very highly paid because they're programming the robots, repairing the robots, setting them up. So it'll be a change, but I think one of the points is you need to retrain all the people that were doing the manual work so they have the skills. It's just what's happened in other industries. If you remember, Pennsylvania, particularly Pittsburgh, was a big steel town, and now they're a big medical town, and have universities. I mean, the economies have to change, and we'll just have to change with it.
I think our higher education idea of Shakopee U, dovetails really well directly into that new
that one,
economy.
So this was, number 10 was spark that startup culture. I mean, we have a lot of highly educated people working here in Shakopee that we right now have, council approved the RFP, we have it out on the street now, and so we're getting a lot of calls from consultants that have done these projects, and one of them called the other day, and they did a project in Janesville, and they said we're sort of similar in a lot of ways to Janesville, and that we've had manufacturing and it's changing, and they have found there's a lot of people, particularly in the manufacturing sector, on the engineering side, that want to start new companies and want to test products out. And that's a real opportunity here. I think some of you know that 3 of the engineers that worked at Seagate left Seagate and started a bike company. Now you would say, how do those two connect? Well, they were engineers, and just because you're working at Seagate doesn't mean you can't build a better bike. And they all sat around one day and said, look, we're all interested in bikes. We could think we can design and build a better bike. And I think that's what we have to kind of draw out of some of these companies, are those people that at night want to go someplace and talk about ideas and, do prototyping, things like that.
Another connection to Janesville is we have the same town founder.
Oh,
Yep. Did you know that? Historic, no? In Montana, Thomas Holmes.
Around, huh?
This hits on a lot of things supporting regional transportation. I think that, we've heard from some people in the community, their dream is eventually someday, 20, 30 years, we get a connection via either bus rapid transfer or light rail to the rest of the community so they can hop on something besides the buses that we have today and get to Minneapolis to a job or to other parts of the community. I think that we really don't have the density that we really need today to make that work, but it'll come over time. I think Eden Prairie is seeing that, and some of the other communities are starting to see that today. As you get denser and get employment centers, you tend to get better transportation.
MVTA is working diligently with some of our local partners. They just had a meeting with Valley Fair about getting some access to do bus service there. Amazon's been a good partner with that. They also have been looking at the Canterbury project and how they can get a bus in through there. So they are looking at those opportunities, and we just need that bus stop at Walmart for the seniors.
I already sent the
I got
email.
a question for you on that. If they create these stops at these various locations, are them stops then made public for the average person to be able to use?
Oh, absolutely. It would be a public bus stop. What we're finding, and what I think is the issue with Valley Fair, is they make $15 a car for parking.
Sure.
So it's not high on their list, so.
Right.
But they thought it best for their employees that live at the little commune there, to get them into areas where they could get groceries and things like that too. So we're working on that.
And then the last one is Celebrate Big Fun. The mayor mentioned that earlier. I think that we've got 2 really big assets here today in Valley Fair and Canterbury. How do we get some more so that it becomes more than just that day trip to Valley Fair or going to the races at Canterbury, so that there becomes other things that you can do?
We had one.
Blacktop Canterbury when they're done.
I think the tie-in to the Celebrate the Big Fun, because I think about all the time, I don't know, I heard a number a couple years ago, 10 million people come to those 4 big events, and most, several of them are just seasonal, right? But how do you get them to come and stay overnight a night or two, and that, or you drive economic development, you drive vitality of your community, and the history and the other aspect. Then all of a sudden, Shakopee itself becomes a draw, because of its historic aspect.
As part of our goal session, I know Confluence is going to come back with their discussion, but you and I, your RV doesn't go anywhere. Mine likes to travel places, but we don't have that kind of opportunity in Shakopee. And if we had that, and I keep thinking of Quarry Lake Park as some sort of campground, because you mentioned that too. I think that's an opportunity for us it's gonna be an investment, but then people could stay, and we'd make it so that they're not living there full-time by pricing them out and that, having it reasonably.
Winter will take care of that.
Well, that well too. But I think those are opportunities to help people come to town, stay the night, I think that's in my idea.
Those RV parks, I know we've had a couple of them here in town. I think we had one over off of Mayor's Street. The one down there, and then I know there's one in Savage, but
One's full.
that's it's full, and they have year-round people, and then I'm going, well, because where's those sites for that? But,
Well, the casino has one.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, could
Yeah,
do that.
casino has a big one.
It's weird, but for different towns, different things are the draw. Darwin, Minnesota,
What's the iron ball?
they get the biggest ball of twine in
Yeah,
Minnesota.
yeah,
right?
twine, yeah.
Yep,
To see
they
that.
do. Been there.
There's,
That one.
there's just certain things, and Duluth probably didn't figure it would be their draw, but that lift bridge. People go there from everywhere just to see this old lift bridge in Canal Park, and then they go to grandma's or whatever.
You look at every town, and it does, and we just haven't we need to do a much bigger job of creating that.
We need to find that. We don't know what that is.
We have it.
I think it's our
People
history.
decide that on their own. We just gotta be throwing stuff out there and see what's.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yeah, Mr. Kursky actually sent me a very interesting article today that talked a lot about that. And essentially, the premise of the article is that cities do not, as they rebrand or are looking to brand themselves, they try to be someone else on occasion, and that works terribly. And the whole premise of the article is that find that thing that is you, that unique thing that is you, and run with it. And I'll send that out to everybody tomorrow morning. But it was a very good article, and just because it works in Duluth, or just because it works in St. Louis, or just because it works in Denver, or just anywhere else that you want to look, take what you have and capitalize on that. Not
We've talked a lot about
Yep.
the riverfront history, Valley Fair, Canterbury Renaissance, and Mystic, and all our locations. We have that. They're coming here for that. Now, how do we just enhance it a little bit and get them to stay?
Okay. We worked on this. We've built our list. Staff will put that together and compile it and have it. We'll have probably another topic on it, yeah.
Do we want to add one of our big ideas? Or I know we have with riverfront. Do we want to keep it at that, or do we want to take on another idea and try and lift it up as a goal?
It's interesting that I was gonna have it on my list, the completion of the comp plan. It's a requirement. And the comp plan will have, some of these ideas in there, I think, and we'll adopt that, and obviously, and then, so I think that's built into the fabric of our community, because that comp plan will then stay in place for, 10 years.
Well, I think we do have the riverfront focus, and I think,
Right.
that's one, we can't take them all at once.
No,
But I think we take that one and invest a little bit, and the university, that's true. So we actually have a couple in
Yeah.
the works, so I
Right.
think let's push those
Well,
and see what happens.
I think it's important, and I really apologize, because I had copies here for everybody, and then I didn't hand them out, but everybody, they're in front of them. Just read this at your leisure, go back in time,
This is from '05, huh?
and like I said, I'm not real schooled on how this was developed, Matt, but it's a city document, they adopted it, and it sits around, and then we don't do anything with it, and then you keep hearing it again in a survey or comp plan, and it's,
So 14 years later, we're talking about the same things.
But we have done some of it.
I know, yeah.
okay. That would conclude our workshop.
You're all invited to my place for a shovel party if you're.
Nice.
I can't.
Well, that would be a violation of the open meeting law, so I thought I'd get it out there in case you show up.
And you just announced it. More the merrier. Item number 6, Counselor Lehman, other business.
Yeah, I do though.
Or would you give it to the?
None, Mayor.
Okay. Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn to February 19th at 7 PM.
Sure.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Further discussion? Discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, those opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned at 9:20.